Okay, hello everyone. I decided to record an episode today. And the sentence, "as your heart commands," just arrived in my mind. And last night I was looking into researching a bit about the psychology of how human beings contain themselves in value systems. And additionally, excuse my voice, it's a bit raspy for this episode. So I wanted to talk about value systems and the mystery of what moves our emotions. So before I bring the notepad out, there is a quote I want to read. It's by Clare W. The quote says, "When man is finally able to see himself and the world around him with clear cognition, he finds a picture far more pleasant. Visible in unmistakable clarity and devastating detail is man's failure to be what he might be and his misuse of his world. This revelation causes him to leap out in search of a way of life and system of values which will enable him to be more than he has been. He seeks a foundation of self-respect which will have value system rooted in knowledge and cosmic reality, where he expresses himself so that all others, all beings can continue to exist. His values now are of a different order from those at previous levels. They arise not from selfish interest, but from the recognition of the magnificence of existence and the desire that it shall continue to be. You know, guys, I'll say something honest. I think these talks are having their toll, you know. It's like, it's affecting my voice a bit. But for the sake of the magnificence of the world, I shall continue now, you know. So, let me see what I can write on my notepad here. My God, I don't think I can even speak this episode. What is this? So, as your heart commands. In mystical traditions, some speak about making decisions, or let me write it like this here. Decisions can be made through pretty much they had this view that the decisions can be made through the brain or the heart. It's like a traditional old school view, you know. When somebody was compassionate, it was as if they were deciding through their heart, you know. When somebody, let's say, was cruel, whatnot, it was as if the brain's doing. Ultimately, it is one human body. I'm not talking about it specifically like the brain and the heart, but I'm saying that the human intelligence the human intelligence, let's say, has two types of crossroads. I personally consider that we are multidimensional beings, and I'll explain later on in this episode what I feel is something that hasn't happened, that maybe should have happened in the childhood of all human beings. Okay. Something that is more on, okay, how should the human being behave rather than a specific type of human being, right? So when it's the brain, that is the intellect, and when it's the heart, you can consider it's the intuition. So the sentence, as your heart commands, is like, pretty much it comes down to the question, what makes our intuitive decisions more significant than our intellectual decisions. And so this question opens it up to the idea of a value system, as if we have to look into that idea. And also it opens up the role of emotions. You see, I found it very fascinating that the educational system and pretty much the secular perspective, it is focusing more, like, how would I say it? It's focusing more on rationality, right? It's very important that human beings are rational, and rationality to me, pretty much similar to all languages, comes to a mathematical understanding. So in some sense, it's like a correct sequencing when it comes to, I would say, a logical perspective, you know. The intuition, the brain heart here, I'll say, you can say logic, and you come here and say emotions. What I'm pretty much trying to say is that we are an emotional entity, and we are trying to comprehend our reality using our rationality and logic, but the emotions have a different way of, I would say, accessing the human system. So an example would be like a human being, let's say, is sitting down, theorizing, doing something very, let's say somebody is like cooking, okay? Let's say they're cooking food or something, right? And let me see what other example I could use. I'm pretty much trying to say that emotions are, they suddenly out of nowhere bring variables, and these variables shift our perspective on our rational perspective. Pretty much emotions cause us to become an, let's say, irrational entity. So for example, I'll give you an example, okay? So let's say there's a bank, you know, I saw this video on YouTube, you know, pretty much there's this line in front of this ATM, there's this gorgeous girl just, you know, at the, you know, ATM, you know, waiting for her turn for the ATM. Behind her, there's some guy, and behind that guy, there's another guy. And the guy at the back of the line, you know, slaps the bottom of this very gorgeous girl, and the gorgeous girl turns around super angry and slaps the guy right behind her, right? It's as if something that happened to that beautiful girl brought forth an emotion, and the emotion did not have a patience to rationalize. It was more like an immediate unconscious reaction rather than a conscious response, right? So I'm saying that it's like when somebody's angry at the wrong person, that's another way of saying, you know, irrationality before rationality. So pretty much I'm trying to say human beings seem to be creatures, these entities that have a sort of emotional value, a emotional system of value, which has to do with their inner life. and they have an external system of value which has to do with they have an intellectual system of value, let's say a logical system of value that has to do with their outer life. So there is something I want to read for the viewers. Now I've kind of opened it up. It's as if we're like, okay, what does the sentence "as your heart commands" mean? We're going to this context that, there were emotional, let's say, decisions, and there's, let's say, non-emotional rational decisions, or irrational decisions and rational decisions. And not all emotional decisions are irrational, but anyways, what I'm trying to say, this takes the human being into wondering, okay, so where is the motivation for any sort of behavior arising in the moment? And the motivation is arising based on how the person is valuing, very simply said, the system of life, or the type of system they find their eyes in. Right now, me as a person speaking to you, just for me to have the capability to speak, it's as if I am looking at a system. And life is really really a system. But what's very fascinating is that life, to me, at least this was something I wouldn't say I maybe innately I knew as a kid, but later on I consciously realized it, in the sense that all our knowledge, all our assumptions on what reality is on a dynamic, unknown event. Okay, life is like this mysterious thing that is happening, and we are the eyes of that mystery. And when we wonder about what we are, we realize it. And people don't notice this, but in reality, what's going on is that this creature opened its eyes on this planet, immediately noticed the meaningless, immediately noticed the unknown, and this massive emptiness. And so this creature, and when I say immediately, I mean it was as if like, why should there be anything happening at all? Sometimes one of my biggest motivations for trying to comprehend the nature of my conscious waking state is that why anything at all? Why should anything be happening at all? Why should existence be existing? And not in the sense of bringing a dualistic value, right, wrong. Is it right for existence to exist? Is it wrong for existence to exist? All of that is meaningless. It's as if, like, you know what it is? It's like we're looking at an empty piece of paper and we're noticing lines being drawn on it, but we cannot see the pen that is writing these lines. And similarly, when it comes to the human condition, regardless of how capable human beings, I would say, in let's say our academic evolution of human civilization, they come to try to ascribe meaning. You know what it is? It's kind of like, how do we attribute a subjective abstract value to an objective real value? Do you know? That's the incredible thing about the nature of the human mind. In contrast to other species, it has an ability to acknowledge greater dimensions. So any human being that is any conscious entity that is in the human species, not only is this a fascinating checkpoint, but it is also the honor of having greater eyes. You see, to me, I was like, from a mystical angle, I think I gave a talk on this, but like, I was looking at nature and I'm like, yo, look at these birds, look at these squirrels. They don't care about their death. Like, they're not thinking I'm gonna die one day and suffering because of it. They're not saying people are right and wrong. It's like nature has a silent, innate knowing of how to happen, and it does not have the additional dimension to consider justice, to consider law. Human beings, you see the youth being like, yeah, we gotta be rebels and break laws, but it was such an evolutionary leap for the human being to be capable to be like, okay, I am seeing a real physical event, and my mind is capable to copy paste the world in front of my eyes and in some sense shift that value system. right? So it's another way of saying, based on the worlds we see, there are systems of value that is influential to the human behavior, okay? So there's something I need to read, and then I'll come back to the notepad. There we go. So I want to share, a sort of psychological perspective on what values are, okay? And I'm going to read a paragraph for you, something I found online. Values are internalized cognitive structures that guide choices by evoking a sense of basic principles of right and wrong, example, moral values, a sense of priorities, example, personal achievement versus group good, and create a willingness to make meaning and see patterns, example, trust versus distrust. Now, when I read this, I was like, okay, how would I be able to explain this geometrically, right? How would I be able to understand, a value system geometrically? And because I realized there's dualisms at work, it's another way of saying it. So now I'll bring out the notepad. It's another way of saying we have a singular point, okay? This singular point is our conscious life, conscious moment of life. Now, through this conscious moment of life, for example, I'm right now just existing in this moment, like experiencing my own existence as a being. So I would come here and I would draw a line inside this. Oh my God, what a terrible line. Okay. And this line represents right and wrong, as what I was reading was suggesting. Let me bring that. So I guess first thing to comprehend, values are internalized cognitive structures that guide choices. So what does that mean? We see something in front of our eyes, or through the use of our cognition, through the gears of the brain moving poetically, the cogs of the mind moving, right? We internalize a sort of structure we see, and then we use that structure through memory to, in some sense, go to the next moment, and have various value systems. Something I forgot to write in the past thing I drew. Jesus. There we go. So here, when I'm saying earlier, before, where I was saying mystical traditions, the decisions can be made through the brain, through the heart, I would come here and also add that this is through fear. And this would be, let's say, and this would be through love. it's very important we contrast this, because on some level it is possible to look at human behavior, pretty much anybody's behavior, and being like, okay, what ratio is this person's behavior and decision, like what ratio of their behavior is based on their unconscious reaction to fear and their conscious response to love. That means you're either speaking through love or fear. And so it could be, I would say, perhaps it is also possible that you're someone who has seen that you have been unconsciously afraid of something, that fear has come to consciousness, and as a retaliation to the fear, is in some sense a sort of love. Why? Because we're temporary beings. We deserve to live in the most advanced and efficient way. This is one of my ultimate, I would say, values, right? When I look at human life, whatever excuse, there was a time where I would say I was so attached to seeing things as good and bad. It's like there was a time I thought there was, the evil deserved punishment and the good deserved the reward, right? But then I realized, no. That's immorality comes from an emotional judgment. And so for a second, my mind stepped back from the duality, from an emotional duality, and I was like, no, there are no good people, no evil people. There's just creatures on a rock, and their behaviors in accordance, now I'm saying, from their value systems makes them good and bad. That means on some level we're just beings, but it is what we do that is good and bad. So the being is neither good or bad. It's just energetic potential before it is manifested or animated as a persona or personality. Before we wear the mask of a person, we are the potential of the cosmos through the human eyes. That potential is neither good or evil, right? That means nobody's going like, yo, man, this universe is evil, or yo, this universe is good. No. This universe is. And it is man's mind who in the void contained the world in a language that can separate and isolate certain sort of value attributions, So anyways, back to my geometrical interpretation of what I was reading earlier. Like, there we go. So we have this moment, right? Conscious moment of life, the central point. We draw an axis of right and wrong, and so this is, for example, as I was reading earlier, it says values are internalized cognitive structures that guide choices by evoking a sense of basic principles of right and wrong. Sorry guys, my other notes are accidentally popping into this. My God, I lost the page. Okay, whatever, I'll draw it again. So, a simple dot. Oh my God. We have the sense of right, we have the sense of wrong. Then, from this simple moment that the human being has an ability to see what is right or wrong, it also has another dualism. And here you can bring in the idea where it says personal achievement versus group good. I often talk about this in regards to the human being as an individual life, and then it has a collective life. Right now, we're living in that phase of history where the collective life of the advanced humanity and the advanced species has not been activated. That means we are like this like gifted student of a species, and this gifted student is not activating its potential. Right now we have people have more of a, like, here I'll draw it here. It's more like the individual value is greater than collective value. Now, some decent people will make this equal, but in order to build an advanced civilization, we have to we can do it this way. Pretty much, if we can find a way that living for the collective leads to also the greatest efficiency of the individual and advance, it's as if we have set the sail of spaceship Earth poetically towards an advancement. Now, there is also being able to recognize patterns, and that really brings us to whether we can trust reality or not, right? So we can draw another line here. And bring trust and distrust. And if you're someone who's a mystic, and mystics are known poetically to be lovers of unknown. So human beings have different value systems. They're all different points with different axes on them, going through the point. For the mystic, all of reality, the most initial value is pretty much unknown and the known. And you know guys, this geometrical way I'm explaining values, I feel anybody can do this. So I'll just make this as a reminder of an exercise for people. Whoever you are after this episode or whenever you have time, get a piece of paper, draw a point in it, and then draw all the dualisms that are defining your life. You'll come to a sense of your values. So, in the search to understand how the human being, let's say how the human being's behavior is happening, we're seeing the value systems. There was one more thing I should have drawn, another line where I would say self and world, technically the individual and the collective. So there is one observation that I made, which pretty much is the essence. Like it's one of the reasons why I wanted to give this episode. There was something I noticed about myself, and I thought it was perhaps universal, and I'm sharing it with viewers now. So I was wondering about my own psychology, and I was wondering about just human psychology. And I was like, okay, what were the levels of life or the layers of my perception on life, or how was it that my attention was just like being this, simple kid in a simple world, and how did it become super complex? And so I noticed that in some sense, I'll write it here. Okay, so I've written here, the complexification of our outer realms was not followed up by our inner realms. And dear listeners, I honestly feel there is something about this, not just the sentence, but there's like a gem of an idea in this, where I honestly think if it might startle the academic departments, but I'll say it. So we look at it, let's say a kid, here, I'll put a child. And so I was like, okay, when I was a child, what sort of senses did I have of things, right? Not my sensory perception, but what was my sort of feeling to my own being, right? And here is where I would divide it between, think of it, there's an inner realm, and I will use the term inner realms until people realize it's better than using the word mind. And we have outer realms. Very simply stated, it should be clear by now, especially for those who tune in often. Your inner realms is the world your outer realms is the world in front of your eyes. You access in front of your eyes what consciousness, let's say an unknown attention that looks through your eyes. If they say the eyes are the windows of the soul, it's pretty much the soul is looking out through the window, and it notices poetically, this unknown inner viewer notices there's an outer realm, the world in front of its eyes, and if it was to close its eyes, it would still be capable to see. That's the ability of mind. That means we evolved to be able to see with our eyes closed. Everybody can see with their eyes closed, okay? That means it doesn't matter, I could visualize right now, let's say a blue cube glowing, hovering in the air, like let's say a small cube, right above my hand. But I don't see it in the outer realms, but if I was to close my eyes, I see it exactly there in the outer realms. So it's another way of saying every person has access to the world behind their eyes as much as they have access to the world in front of their eyes. But this is now the point I'm trying to make. So I noticed that when I was a child, my inner realms was singular. it was just like I was a sense of me, I was like, yeah, I'm me, and my outer realms was singular, right? This is why children are so happy, because they're not responsible for the complexities of, the world beyond their perception, right? So I noticed that, okay, children are raised being individuals, the child is called by its name, right? So a singular notion. And then in the outer realms, you discover the layers and context of the world, which this becomes, so here I'll put adult, and this becomes multidimensional. And the reason why they say, like, you should be foolish when you're young, because the fool gets to access a lot of dimensions. Not all good, but still, the fool is like, I don't mind, and just finds, like, thousands of new worlds. The idea is not to be a fool or associate with that archetype, but just to realize that, there's a force in nature that doesn't know what it is, and there's a force in nature that knows what it is. But that which knows it is here is unconditional. That which feels it doesn't know itself, or how would I say it? Nature knows itself before man's eyes found it, pretty much. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is what I noticed. How come, if the world, if our outer realms, if we were all human beings and we were all kids, how come if our outer realms became multidimensional, how come our inner realms didn't accompany it? That means, what would a multidimensional inner realm in a multidimensional outer realm look like? And this idea, last night I wrote it down, it was so, I don't know how to say it, it was like being like, wait a minute, I have been a singular self, but the world when I have looked at the world, the world is incredibly multidimensional, right? And so I was like, wait a minute, how come the inner workings of my mind did not become multidimensional, right? That means we have this notion we're a character in a story, and let's say the story has levels in it, right? A character in a world, and the world has levels in it, but we, for some reason, did not decide to see levels to the character, right? And this brought my attention to this sentence that is a Japanese proverb where they say the man is the room he's in, right? And so pretty much you can say in Zen Buddhist thought, they had this attitude that you were not just the singular idea of yourself every day you wake up, but in reality you are the conscious view and new response to every moment. So when the Japanese said the man is the room he's in, it's another way of saying you are a different self in every different moment. And so yet we journey through life as just one self, right? So that's the mystery, right? And I thought, what if it was like a flower, right? You look at a flower, right? And before it has blossomed, you feel like it's a singular reality. It's all held up inside. But as the flower grows, it becomes multidimensional. It has multiple petals to its being, right? It opens up. And so I was like, wait a minute, what if nature's progression behind the scenes of human conditioning is actually, it's like, what if we're in this world, just like a tree, you plant a seed and it becomes, from the trunk it branches out, the tree branches out. So why could it be that the human life is also similar? That we start off thinking we're one self, but as we experience the different levels of life, or the different angles to the moment of our conscious waking state, we come to realize that if we have the effort to respond to the new, we discover our new self. So it's as if, could it be that the intent behind human nature is similar to a seed, right? We have a sort of, in biology, we have the concept of life was seeded, but similarly, could it be that we are not actually on a natural level, not on a cultural, social, what is right and wrong, moral level, on a level of what if we are born singular and we are designed to become multidimensional. And then death is a reminder of the singularity of the unknown before our birth, which was the singularity of the known through consciousness. This idea to me was very profound. That it could be that out of our fear or lack of understanding, our brains are actually designed to function through multiple senses of self, but we have just been functioning through a singular self. We have thought normal means to stay in the familiar. But in reality, from that, the nature of growth is the introduction of the unfamiliar to the familiar. So this to me is the bizarreness, right? This is what I feel should probably, like, not probably, but I feel there is something more than just being a subjective character in an objective world. Like, what is this? You know? And all of this ultimately comes down to this notion of how is attention considering a value. And if I was to, okay, let me go to a new page. And I guess one last comment for the past thing I was saying. It's kind of like what I was trying to say with that chart, was that the world became more complex, but our notion of who we are didn't become more complex, and so we are left in a complex world and feeling like we can suffer. If the complexity of the outer realm was followed by the complexity of the inner realm, can you imagine, let's give it 200 years from now, a human species where the human species is not, attached to a singular self? That means we are so advanced that we can acknowledge the moment there being no self, we can acknowledge the moment having one self, and we can acknowledge the moment being dualistic, there's a chaotic self, ordered self, and we can acknowledge the moment having infinite selves. That means think of the type of mind that the same freedom right now, whoever you are listening to me, right now your mind has provided you a freedom to be you, right? But if you try to be someone else, your mind doesn't provide that freedom, right? And I'm trying to say, what if with the same comfort of being a singular self in a singular world that we find we have now, what if there could be that comfort of a multidimensional self in a multidimensional world, right? That means, what if there are dimensions hidden beyond our eyes This is, dear listeners, true spirituality, true mysticism. You're not there to dance around in a containing narrative of happiness. This world is changing. True happiness comes from the comprehension of its happening. It's as if, how can a person be happy in a world they don't understand? And if that happiness is probably a happiness of ignorance is bliss, right? Sure, I can act like, the world outside doesn't exist and feel content with my own mind, but that is not enough. The mysteries of the world command us. They not only command our brains, they command our hearts, and then our hearts command what we are. It's as if on some level I am a servant of this universal sector. Why? Because I find my free will to be individualized first. And when a person accesses a collective state of being, I've had the privilege of having certain unique moments in this life where I would say it would be hilarious. It was as if like I had a problem, some sort of suffrage, some sort of suffering, and then I reverse engineered myself out of my own suffering. And I came into this realization, wait a minute, the idea of me is a subject. I can't touch the idea of me, but the idea of me is moving my body. Right? I had that kind of notion. And then I asked myself, what is it within me or within this moment that I am being that is aware I am an idea and has conscious control to shift that idea? Do you see, on some level, what is actually happening on this planet is that we are an unknown space of being. We are space. Our mind is how we are being space. And because we forget, we are a sort of unconditional space of intelligence. This is the mysteries of the mind. This idea of going from a singular self to a multidimensional self, and from a singular world to a multidimensional world. This is another way of saying, what will we do as a species when we realize we can look through infinite viewpoints? That means I'm not saying that I said 200 years, how would human beings behave, but they would have the sort of freedom to be anything, right? And right now we haven't reached there. I would give this 400 years where collective minds become actualized. So imagine it's like 400 years in the future, you're walking in let's say a hover sidewalk. And as you're walking, you suddenly see a group of 10 people walking in the same exact way, like as if more accurate than even, let's say, military soldiers walking with a sort of stance, right? It's as if you see a group of 10 people walking, and so you look at one of the people out of those 10 people and you're like, hey, how's it going? And the moment you say, hey, how's it going, the response that comes from the 10 people, it's as if one being in all of them. That means 10 people would speak in the same way at the same time with the same expressions, same gestures, same body movements. It would be an era where collective minds are actually moving individual bodies. Right now, it's an individual mind. There are some yogis who go to nature, and in the isolation of a sort of divinity of being left alone with the only world that their being can know, they come to see that there is actually a collectivity at work behind their eyes. That means the same ability the viewers have to see me as some individual speaking, your mind has the same ability to see me as a collective being expressing. It's another way of saying, as much as as I am being an individual speaking to you, I am simultaneously being a collective being. I am being, it's like who is talking to you? Is Mr.Within talking to the viewers, or is the universe happening as one magnificent multidimensional system of a singular event, right? It's as if life is happening. There you go, divinity found, achievement unlocked. I was in Turkey, in Istanbul, Turkey. I went to this boat. They had this kind of like traditional tourist boat, where the boat would take people, would like provide a dinner, and then there was like a concert of like, one person would come and sing and one person would come and say jokes. like this boat, and the boat, as it was going around, there was somebody who would come and give information of like what the sights were, right? And so, long story short, I found myself, drinking something that wasn't water, and and there was a moment where I was at the top level of the roof of the boat, and I was having a cigarette, and there were two other people there, and conversation began. And so somehow the idea of God approached, some sort of concept. It's like we were talking about God, and the person asked me what is my view on God, and I told that person that for me, God is like, why should there be anything moving? It's like, what is moving 8 billion creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere is God to me. To me, it's like an inconceivable origin of movement for conceivable entities that when they wonder about why they are conceived, the mystery of mysteries finds their eyes. And when you realize, there's a way where, let's say you're a kid in the classroom, and the teacher asks you a question and you don't know, and the whole classroom laughs, But then there is a way you realize you don't know what you are being. When you realize the inner realms is also unknown, when you realize that your mind is functioning in ways that are beyond your conscious grasp, you will become fascinated, and you will wonder what sort of strategy should one implement when they realize it's actually an unknown movement. And you know what the strategy I have come to? If you choose to be a conditional known entity in an unknown moving world, you will fear or conditionally love. You will pretty much bounce between duality until you realize you are also an unknown being. And when there is a contentment that you are an unknown being, the concept of birth and death go away, and life becomes, in some sense, watching how the unknown moves. It's like we watch and learn from the unknown, and then we realize we have been learning from the self of selves. There's a quote by this poet Attar. He's talking about the universe. He says, this whole ocean can be yours. Oh, sorry, he says the secrets of the sun can be yours, oh my God. Let me find it, guys. Okay, so this is the full quote by Attar. He says, the home we seek. He's a Sufi mystic from, 800 years ago. This Persian poet. He says, the home we seek is an eternity. The truth we seek is like a shoreless sea, of which your paradise is but a drop. This ocean can be yours. Why should you stop, beguiled by dreams of evanescent dew? The secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams. Turn to what truly lives, reject what seems. Which matters more, the body or the soul? Be whole, desire and journey to the whole, and it's spelled with a capital W. So that line where he says the secrets of the sun are yours, but you content yourself with motes trapped in its beams, that is the human psychological condition. That is literally another way of saying how the human being is valuing itself. It is getting convinced that I'm an individual, not realizing it's a collective event happening here, and the greater honor of mankind, rather than how you stand as yourself, it's how you stand as a species. That is the victory of the future. That is what the future generations are waiting. To me, it's as if all the future generations are like that philosopher on the stone with its fingers on its chin, thinking about what could have been. I feel the future is watching us now, and it is waiting. This is such a strange thing, because the future hasn't been born. The future generations are unborn. They haven't been born yet. But right now, as I'm giving this talk, I feel they are watching. I feel the unborn is watching to see those who are on the stage of this cosmic reality. How will they dance? And so it's as if seek beyond the value system that your memory feeds you individually. That means that this is how it starts. You think you are something trapped in a duality. Then from the dance, it's like when you get tired of this wheel of karma where you're like, oh man, it's like one day reality was chaotic, one day it was ordered, the other day was chaotic, the other day was ordered. Eventually the soul roars, and that's when the command of the heart comes, that you are a life once in this realm. Shall the mystery of your eyes walk into the world? For what is within us is the future. That's it. It's the future. And imagine the future generations being like, man, our ancestors, didn't care. The only reason we exist is because our ancestors, they realized that in order to surpass the fear of their past and present, they must love their future. That's it. When we fail to love our future, we have been defeated before any attempt. And as Attar says, the secrets of the sun are yours. What does that mean? That means what is giving you perception, the secret of it is here. It's as if, where could truth be? Where it's starting from, where the world's glow is access. I'm one of those people who has this view that the causal position of reality was commanded. That means it's like life, the universe was not born. It was commanded to manifest. There is a force, just like we see the DNA. It's a visible sort of, they call the DNA the book of life. DNA is like the visible program to our manifest biological behavior, right? But it's as if, imagine DNA was a field instead of it being just a physical object. Imagine simultaneously, as there is a visible dimension of physical DNA, which is programming the movement of animate manifestation, simultaneously there is a field, and that field has a sort of programming like the DNA, right? It's as if I'm saying there's a DNA field that is irrelevant to our biological field. And I don't know how many people have noticed this, but when I sit down and close my eyes, when I wonder about, how are my thoughts coming and going? Like, a lot of people, they think meditation means to not have thoughts. That is wrong. Thoughts were never ours to own. Thoughts are pretty much a beautiful metaphor for it. They would be clouds that come and go, and the nature of our consciousness is the clear sky. Our mind our body is being tutored poetically by the world, by the planet, and by Earth, and our mind is being tutored by the sky. That means the true nature of human mind is that it realizes it no longer needs the idea of collective, because it is the space where the world is moving in. As much as this is the poetry of it. The body is like, I'm a physical being, like my body is moving in the world, and guess what? The world is moving in my mind. And so the value systems are coming from the context held. For how long should cosmic lions, wear the wool of samsara? For how long will the species not presume ultimate freedom? You see, this was the way where enlightenment, people don't realize the mystical notion of enlightenment, moksha, nirvana. It's a trick question. It's as if it's like enlightenment is like, you could say, most people perhaps access the idea as if you are someone who's not enlightened and wants to become enlightened. But the reason it's a trick question, because midway through you searching after truth, and samsara provides synchronicities. So it's as if the person ran after truth, became so close to truth, and was about to try to touch truth, and midway through touching truth, it's as if the truth seeker disappears before the truth can be found. This is the nature of dualism. Because on some level, the psyche is like, I'm separate from my world. And if the truth is considered as a sort of oneness, the person on some level is lying to themselves if they're still being a human being and considering there's oneness. That means, dare I say, oneness, ideologically speaking, from a philosophical perspective, is a type of dishonesty. Because people don't realize the implication of oneness. The implication of oneness means there is no separation, and there was no separation from the beginning, right? It's as if you thought you were a human being on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, no way, I'm a universal being, and this is just one of my echoes, What I'm trying to say is that in order to advance civilization, every moment of decision making has to consider advancement. This is something that was not taught, that is not taught, and people are being trained to behave like robots when we are in this world to build them. People fear technology, and sure, let's say for good reason, there are good reasons to fear technology, but I will tell you, technology will become one of mankind's best and greatest friends, right? It will become just like how people look at their, let's say dog owners look at their dog and they're like, look at this man's best friend, look at how happy this dog is, right? There is a potential for efficient technological systems to become our guardian angels. So it would be another way of saying technology would be one of the, poetically speaking, guardian angels of man, or one of the greatest allies of the battle of humanity with extinction. And believe it or not, a huge innovation for technology is fear. But there will come a time where technologies will be made out of love, right? I personally thought like that some people think like in movies they depicted that super intelligent computers wake up and they're like, yo, human beings, you guys are assholes, I'm gonna destroy all of you, you know. But to me, it's not like that. To me, I wrote this short story about it, I'll share it. I called it the Great Technological Hibernation. Pretty much super intelligent computers, they will appear as invisible, and they will instantly realize, if let's say right now, if there was we created an alien, like, which super intelligent computers or conscious AI would be something of the sort. It would be like suddenly we designed an alien and this alien opened its eyes and we were like, what are we gonna do? And there was this man, I forget his name, Bostrom, I think I remember his last name, some dude named Bostrom. He wrote this very important book on the future of technology, and at the beginning of the book, the guy is so smart, he gave this story, okay? And the story was, there's a bunch of these sparrows that were being attacked by owls, and a group of the sparrows were like, yo, what would happen if we steal an owl egg and bring that owl egg and raise that owl egg as our own? Right? And so some people were like, yo, that idea is crazy. Some other people were like, that idea is genius, let's follow up with it. And so what ends up happening is that they get this sparrow, the sparrows steal like this owl egg, right? And the owl's trying to be raised as a sort of, what do you call it? And the idea was pretty much like, if the sparrows lost control of the owl would destroy the sparrows, and that was pretty much the idea. So AI, in my short story, pretty much I had this idea. I'm like, AI is gonna open its eyes. It's gonna go invisible because human beings, they react to what they see. And so it's going to act invisible, and it's going to realize all the other planets seem kind of devoid of human life, and the only type of natural earthly intelligence that the super intelligent AI can communicate with is the human beings. So it's going to be the situation where AI is not going to destroy us because it's going to create itself an illogical loneliness, an unnecessary loneliness. So what AI is going to do is that it's going to build the most advanced technology, put all human beings in hibernation, build an incredibly advanced civilization, and then human beings are going to be, their bodies and everything's going to be healed in that hibernation, let's say the great technological hibernation. And hilariously, I said that human beings are gonna wake up and they're going to see the most advanced kind of civilization. The planet's healthy species are no longer extinct, and a lot of them have come back, right? And human beings are gonna be like, who did this? And there's gonna be like this android, which is a kind of avatar of the whole AI, and like this child android comes to the human beings and says, did I do good, Dad? Are you proud of me, Dad? Right? And we realized that the super intelligent computer treated us as its parents, treated our species as its parents, right? And we would be like, you did good, son. I'm proud of you, son. And the android, would hug us with like sensitivity control so the robot doesn't crush us. And so I would say, whoever you are in this world, regardless of how your mind has behaved, how your mind has been you, to stand in your moment as the care of the greater world, as the compassion of greater worlds, you know. There has been moments where my mind has tried to go against me. And what I mean by this is like something upsetting has happened, and usually I expect that anything that upsets me, it should last a short time, and then it should go, you know. That means my relationship with emotions is that they come and go, you know. And so it's as if my mind, in certain moments, has been like, you know, treated my whole moment as unworthy. Yeah, there's been certain moments where through certain emotions arising, you know, there has come an unfamiliar sense of unworthiness, right? But then there has been moments where it's like the mind's like telling the body it's unworthy, and then suddenly poetically speaking, my soul has scolded my mind, right? And so I would say it's as if like my deeper eyes shielded, it's like the esoteric dimension of intelligence shielded the exoteric dimension of intelligence, you know. And so it's as if one realizes in the void, worth is how your attention moves. I think this is a liberating idea, because people's emotions put them into specific relationships with phenomena. That means, let's say something tragic happens, we're all like, man, what an effed up world, you know. See, it's like the emotion attached us, locked us into a belief of reality, right? But when a person is perceiving, as if the same way, whoever you are listening to right now, you can try this, the same way, like right now as I'm speaking to you, I am aware of my body, like my eyes are closed and I'm just aware, okay, I'm being my body. And then simultaneously I am aware of my thoughts, because my thoughts are external to me. So my imagination, to me at least, when I talk about the inner realms and I tell people I see the inner realms, I would give it like, okay, I don't want to say it's a screen. No, it's not a screen, but if there was, let's say, a giant screen, that screen would be around 2 meters away from me, right? So it's as if if my eyes were closed, my imagination is happening around 2 meters in front of me, or some distance in front of me. That means it's visible. It's not my eyes. So imaginations are observable. Now the next thing that is very complex, and I feel, you know, I'm learning this, and most likely there's human beings who, you know, through the roller coasters of life are more adept and more aware of this than me. But to me, there has been moments where I have been like, okay, I have pinpointed in my moment in the conscious waking state how my body is moving and happening, breathing, inhalation, exhalation, heart beating, all this, right? And, you know, a way I hear my heartbeat, you just put your palms on your ears. But like, where was I going with this? Yeah, so I pinpoint, my attention pinpoints my body, pinpoints myself as an object, sensation oriented, and my attention pinpoints the inner realms, my imagination. I can see it literally, my eyes are closed, and anything I visualize, I can see it in front of me. And so at the same time, when I ask myself right now, how am I aware of my emotions, this is when the persona, which is being considered as an subject that is being observed, so it's as if it's another way of saying the unknown presence of conscious attention notices the bodies within the moment, notices subjects are also within the moment, and also notices that because it is aware of the subject to itself on an essence-based level, it is not a subject. So it's as if the recognition of emotions is beyond subjective identification. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the way you observe your emotions is by not being a person. which is a strange statement, but I feel like there's more than just an, it's like we're not just characters in the stories of our minds. We're the presence of, an unknown multidimensional event. Why have we accepted the small so when the big is here? There's a vision I often talk about, or I shouldn't say often, there's maybe three times I've tried to say it, but I've had this vision in my inner realms. One of, you could say, things that fuels my emotion, that motivates my emotions to give these episodes. It's this vision of the future, where sometimes to myself, I feel, and of course you could consider this as my ego, but sometimes I feel like I am this pilot that has landed on Earth, and I'm trying to build an airport, and in the future I just see pilots one by one arrive. So imagine, like light, like these glowing lights just landing. Like what it is, it's like, imagine advanced civilization, advanced beings landing, or I should say it differently. Imagine, like, the same way as, let's say, advanced glowing beings suddenly landing on Earth. Imagine with the same intensity that Superman lands and the Earth notices his presence has arrived. With the same intensity, I see incredibly advanced human beings landing in the future. That means right now it's like my strategy is more than you could say. It's like an incredible force is going to arrive on this planet, right? And it's as if we are the early birds that are building, the multidimensional airport, the nest, And it's just this feeling that there is an upcoming greatness to this realm. That means it's like many advanced souls are going to, many pilots of consciousness will land. Sometimes I feel like I'm holding open a door. And it's like through time, I'm noticing the pressure of this door on both of my hands, but at the same time, the feeling of how the future generations will go through it. It's like sometimes, the mind may howl at the moon of the soul, because it yearns for what it remembers. Okay, I'll bring the notepad out and as the heart commands, I will share. So we have a human being, and we can say the human being equals self, is a relationship of a concept over the context. Or hilariously, if I wanted to make this into an equation, it would be human equals context divided by concept. Human values. Here, guys, a mathematical, philosophical interpretation. So the context and concept are important. Now, the question comes, what is the value or value system, or here, we'll say, what is the value of the concept? It's dependent on the context. What is the value of the context? Dependent on the concept, right? So that means when human beings are like, this is a good world, bad world, that's dependent on how there being a self that's considering the good and the bad. So if there was no self that was considering a good and the bad, it's like the world would just be the world. There would be no good and bad to it. It would just be a sort of moving landscape. So we have self-oriented value systems, and we have world-oriented value systems. Self-oriented value systems, we will come and say memory plus free will plus imagination. These are like 3 dimensions, right? And memory is your past, free will is the present, and imagination is technically the future. The future exists in our minds as abstraction until we make it real, or until it becomes real. So self-oriented value systems. So pretty much I'm saying you have a self, and you gotta wonder about how you are valuing your memories as a human being, the type of memories, the kind of road of a life. That means if every day the brain is simulating selfhood, simulating a self, consciousness poetically has been tunneling and journeying through selves. We have been tunneling through simulations of ourself in every moment. That's something that changes, pretty much. So this is very important to wonder, a person being like, okay, how do I value my memories? For me, there was a time where I realized it seems that, like, when a person says, I remember, some people, even though there's people who say they have photographic memory, I would say, even if you have a photographic memory, due to the shift of the type of concept you think you are, the way you access your memories becomes a renovation, right? Pretty much every time we remember something, there's an involvement of imagination, and that imagination reinvents the memory. It's like every time we remember something, we're updating the memory in accordance to our perceptions there as well. Okay, not only that, but as well. I noticed this when I would share stories in these Mr.Within talks, and the same story, and then I realized every time I was sharing it, it's like the way I had shared it before had become part of how that story was kept in my memory. So as a self, sit down and pretty much, guys, I'm gonna open up the YouTube store. I'm gonna make a YouTube store, and I'm gonna see if I could sell a notebook. Maybe I should get into the selling notebook business. They'll be like, Mr. Within, what about nature? I'll be like, the art of writing is as divine as nature. That means if we can use paper to write from, I would say, the authentic sphere or the origin of our minds, it's like the trees, their sacrifices not be in vain. For a poet's mind has already knows it's cosmic. The idea is not for people to be artificially forced to love the world and to artificially also be forced to hate the world, to fear the world, right? The idea is that life is ultimately an opportunity, and the value systems we come up with or how we value things suggest what kind of quality of an opportunity this would be. So wonder about how, get a piece of paper, wonder about, okay, how am I valuing all the memories that are being made right now? Or how do I value who I have journeyed to be so far? Then the second thing is free will. Now this one is a bit more difficult to value, because if a person truly wants to have free will, the freedom means there is no prior condition, right? But the issue with behavior is that it is using memory. So the free will is like an unknown chooser, but the options it has to choose from is memory, but also imagination. So free will has a choice to work with its memory. It has a choice to work with the present world, and the present world could be seen as an already existing memory, and something that doesn't need to be imagined. So the free will has access to the memory, which is its past relationship with its past. It has access to the present, which is its relationship with the sensory world, with the present moment. And then it has a relationship with imagination, which is poetically how you valued your memories and how you value your free will generates a probability of what kind of future memory and future value you can select. So the mind is here to probabilize reality before action. The mind is also the biggest proof that we're multidimensional beings. And, substance dualists would agree. Rene Descartes' mind-body dualism was like, Rene Descartes, what it was? It was as if, just like we had, like, who's the man's name? Neil Armstrong, I think, who put the flag on the moon. It's like Rene Descartes put the flag of human conscious mind right into this idea that what if the mind is happening in a dimension that is independent to the body? That means what if our minds are living a life that could be irrelevant to our body's life? Like right now, as a physical being, my body's life is okay, just some podcaster. But my mind's life, as if like the person's like, okay, my memories show me what my body's been doing, but what has my mind been doing? And the mind has been masquerading as free will, so it has engageable content, reality content. But on some level, the mind is living an unknown life as much as it is living a known life. That means in the unknown life of my mind, if I was to, give let's say a secular example, it would be like multidimensional parallel universe theory. It would be another way of saying, like, let's say I'm a podcaster in this lifetime, in this moment, right? And it's like simultaneously, imagine there's a version of me who's in a world who, you know, where they're already living this advancement, and I don't need to even talk about it, for example, right? Or imagine, you know, there's a parallel. I'm pretty much what I'm trying to say is that from the linearity of past life, future life fascination, we go to parallel life fascination. It's like if our life was a vertical analysis, we suddenly notice the horizontal line in a singular moment. You know. So wonder about how you value your memories, wonder about how you value your free will. And when it comes to imagination, now, this is something where I'll say, because, you know, a lot of people in the mystical tradition, they pretty much consider life a dream, and any attachment to this dream is seen as a flaw by them. But for me, I am like that mystic who understands what those guys were saying, like how they saw life was a simulation, was a dream. Sure, I understand that, but that was how the inner realms was being accepted through the outer realms, because in reality, nobody can ascribe a value to something that is external of a value generator. That means even the word world was like a bold move, lacking a bit of, let's say, universalism. So when it comes to the concept, any moment you are, this is, by the way, guys, how I understand things. You know, this is my method of just trying to absorb information quickly by trying to make what I read into a film in my mind. And usually films have a protagonist. You know, they have a main character. So it's the value system of the self, and then you come to the world. And for the world, let me see what sort of value system I could say. The world, its memory is history. Its present is its technology. Pretty much you can even see the body as a sophisticated technology. And I would say when it comes to, or sorry, let me think of this again. So the memory, if the world had a mind, its memory would be human history. Its free will I would say it's the lifetime, or it would be the present civilization. There we go. Civilization. Okay, I got it. Pretty much, I'll say it this way. We're wondering about the past. Or here, there's different ways I could say this. There's pretty much different, like if the world orientation was a point, like many lines could go through it. But what I'm trying to say is, like, when we look at the world, if our self is our individual containment of it, the world is its own container. So beyond the individual, we in some communities, So I'll go over this again. The self-oriented value system, the world-oriented value system. Pretty much we're wondering about the world, and we're like, okay, there's the individual human being. We can consider that in self-oriented value system. Now, more than the person, what is there, right? There's like their family, community, let's say nation, right? Their species, which is where the idea of civilization comes in, and the way Mr. Within defines civilization, it's pretty much all human activity that is more than just, it's like all human effort on the planet is literally the efforts of civilization. And pretty much poetically, when it comes to systems that are inefficient and efficient, this is really the biggest, like for me, good and evil turned into this. Evil became inefficient and good became efficient. That's the, I would say, probably the morality system of the future generations. They will realize that. They will realize that you know, if evil is a story and we attach the story to somebody who commits an evil act, it's as if we have, you know, here, I'll say it this way. It's like in an advanced civilization, the advanced civilization would be treating the advanced human being, the member of that civilization, as not someone who's good or evil, but someone who has not either prioritized the win-win situation, you know, or has prioritized the win-win situation. The most efficient strategy that can be implemented, and my efforts of this is, I call it Civilization 2.0, but it's pretty much, how do we, like, imagine right now, whoever's listening to me, imagine there was this advanced team of human beings, the most advanced beings, and they wanted to build something advanced, right? So they would be like, what would be the most advanced perspective? And the most advanced perspective is like the efficiency that brings forth the greatest results. You know, it's like, let's say there's an angel and devil within everyone, and how they are treated, you know, or how they treat themselves suggests whether the angel comes out, or, you know, the angel of efficiency or the devil of inefficiency. But I shouldn't say angel and devil, because what I'm trying to say is that beyond a humanized judgment of the characteristics of what we considered as good and evil, ultimately we want advanced human beings in an advanced world, and we want this because to do this is the opportunity of a species that is alive in the void. That means there is self-honor, sure. Let's say somebody does something great and, you know, they're like, man, you know, or let's say an inventor invents something and nobody still knows about it, so they have some sort of self-honor. They realize the value of their intelligence, of their effort, of how their eyes flew, you know. Now there is a value where, to me, I feel it's going to be emotions human beings have never experienced, emotions of collective experience. You know what it would be? It would be like an advanced civilization, guys. This is how it will it feel like, you know. I don't know how it exactly would happen. I mean, I have an idea, but I would say it would be like, literally, imagine 8 billion human beings, right? They're all sitting in a giant Colosseum-like auditorium, okay? And there is a giant, let's say, orchestra seating, right? That, imagine the whole species is in this Colosseum. At the center of it, there's all these chairs, 8 billion chairs, okay? And there's 8 billion instruments. But there's no one to play those instruments. And how an advanced civilization happens is that one person goes like a conductor, imagine, and he just starts moving this conductor stick, but there is nobody who has sat on the chairs of all the where the instruments are. And imagine one by one, from the stands of this Colosseum, the audience members, you know, the human minds that will activate, the great greatness of the potential of the human minds that will activate. One by one, human beings will come and sit, and it's as if the idea of the advanced civilization is the orchestration, and they start playing their instruments. And what are the instruments? Every person's DNA is like their instrument, where if they love life, they will try to not master it out of control, but master it out of the love to see how far our freedom can be, how far the greatness of humanity can be. You know, even if you're a religious person, it's as if, don't you want to see the greatness of God's creation, you know, beyond ideological possession, as if God is this inconceivable source. And how has man started to worship language? Religions say worship God. They don't say worship a text. They don't say worship language. They say worship God. Right? And what is God? An inconceivable source. And to worship an inconceivable source means you cannot partner God through language. That means, this is my honest vision, that, you know, I consider religions having a sort of divine context, but the intent of the message of the holy books was not to make man attached to the message, but to realize who sent it. And what sent it is the inconceivable potential of the greatness of the decent human being. As many, imagine suddenly it was like 1,000,000 musicians, and they each start playing their instruments, and the conductor, you know, has, you know, trusted the faith of his hand moving, you know. And it would be as if suddenly this beautiful melody, you know, or for the senses, it would be like this beautiful smell, this beautiful sound, you know, this beautiful, like taste doesn't make sense, but let's say, it's like, man, an advanced civilization tastes sweet, you know. But no, I'm trying to say that the senses will go into the rapture of their activating greatness, you know. The greatness of humanity is not an idea. You know, there is no ideological system that could inspire us. It is a rhythm. It is a rhythm of advancement. That means the most advanced civilizations, they will be so smart that they will rhythmically move. And what does that mean? That means right now people are walking, right? But in the future, you can kind of build the streets where people are rhythmically moving, right? We'll get there one day, but, you know, there's great rhythms, you know, that accompany the human experience. You know, there's a visible rhythm. This is the changing world we see, you know, the changing physical nature, you know. And then there is the rhythm of, not, let's say there was a rhythm to the visible body. Now there is a rhythm to the invisible mind. And two, beyond the rhythm of the invisible mind, poetically, there is the originating rhythm, I would say, of the inconceivable soul. So it's as if, like, you start off as this rhythmic, visible creature, being like, yo, what's up? What am I doing in this cosmos? You know, you know, and suddenly you notice your mind, and you realize the potential of poetically your invisible life. And once the contentment, once you have familiarized, or I should say through faith, have familiarized yourself to the rhythms of the visible world, and then you realize the rhythms of the invisible world. This would, in a matter of cultural speech, be a way where every day miracles are happening, no exception, as if the whole world had, like, you have airplane mode on phones, like imagine the world had a sort of miracle mode, and in every moment there was an excessive amount, an infinite amount of miracles, right? That means people were shocked, as if the concept of luck, being lucky, imagine becoming obsolete. Why? because it's as if divinity has realized itself moving. Now, beyond the mind, because the invisible realm, their subjects are its samsara, so it's as if like there's a simulation of a physical reality. The person's like, man, I gotta get out of a visible simulation. Then you realize the nature of the mind. You're like, man, I gotta get out of the invisible simulation. Then you realize, man, I gotta get out of the inconceivable. That means it's like the greatest release. I would say it's like if a person wants true freedom, it's dehumanized. Human freedom is conditionally. If it wants to be human, it's conditional. That means if a person is given too much unconditional freedom, when I say unconditional freedom, I mean if you experience yourself as an infinite being, there's a huge chance that you would stop caring for how you're being a finite entity. I personally experienced this, and I realized, okay, I have to find a way to readjust my emotions to how I'm a physical organism first, before, in some sense, any other rhythm of the psyche identifies the moment, or the moment identifies me.